Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert. And today we're going to answer your questions about anything related to hiring. Any method of getting hired, any stage of every method, whatever you want. This is all about you guys. You ask the questions. I'll do my best to help. And right when we start off, we're going to go to the polls. The polls for the last week. This is what we have. So, the best way to improve job interviewing abilities is to A, prepare my answers to common questions, B, practice by doing pretend interviews with a friend, or mock interviews, as they're more properly called, or all of the above in that order. And the winner, of course, was all of the above in that order. So you practice on your own, you learn the answers to questions, you figure out what you're going to say, and then you practice, and you practice in as realistic of a situation as possible by getting a friend or a family member to assist you. Okay, it's very, very simple, everybody. You just ask these people if they'll help, and they be the interviewer, and you could either give them a list of questions, or you could tell them to go on Google or something and write their own questions, and then you answer them. Great practice. That's how you prepare. Another question was, working as an employee is my only viable option to make good money. So do you agree with that or not? True or false? And the vast majority of people, or the majority of people, said false by 72% to 28%. And I would agree with that. No matter who you are, there's more to making money than simply working as a job. Working as a job is the most obvious, the default way, right? And it works for a lot of people, and that's great. But there are other options, and if you're just of a certain personality type and you're not particularly cut out for that, you don't enjoy it, it doesn't fill the hole, it doesn't give you a feeling of fulfillment and satisfaction, there are other ways, and that's what I explore on this channel. Here's another one from 5 days ago. How does one become rich? Was the question I threw out to everybody, and this is what you guys said. 4% said being paid in wages. 7% said being paid a salary. Hopefully everybody knows the difference between wages and salary. Wages is per hour. Salary is usually per year. Okay. With indefinite amount of hours worked. Being paid in shares. 63% of you guys said that. And 26% of you guys said being paid in share options. Now, if I were to answer this, I would pick being paid in share options because, if you are in a certain position, you're an executive at a publicly traded company, or yeah, I suppose you could do it in privately held companies, but usually publicly traded companies, share options, stock options, they are the way to go if you can swing that deal, technically. I'm not saying I recommend that, but I believe it was, who was the celebrity CEO that, was it Larry Ellison, who famously worked for a salary of $1, and then the rest of his compensation was in stock options, and he made, millions upon millions, like hundreds of millions of dollars. It was all in stock options. But there's some ethical issues possibly with stock options, in my opinion. Okay, here's a question I threw out. I'd rather be, this is the joke one, ladies and gentlemen, the joke one. I do a joke poll every Saturday. Okay, some people still give me a lot of flack over this, but hey, you got to have a sense of humor sometimes. I'd rather be learning, sleeping on a boat, or communing with giraffes. And surprisingly, communing with giraffes did not win. It was one of the lowest ones, tied with on a boat. I thought that was a song, right? On a boat. Anyway, 39% of you guys were really serious. You said learning, and that's actually very commendable. Good. The best thing for me to learn is public speaking, conversational skills, finance skills, networking skills, or written communication skills. This surprised me. This surprised me a lot. Because first of all, I had a couple of people saying, well, aren't networking skills and conversational skills the same thing? No, they're not. Conversational skills is pretty self-evident. It's your ability to have a conversation with somebody and to do it well, which means you can get a free-flowing conversation with anyone and they enjoy talking to you. Okay, that's very, very important. Okay, anybody can fire a series of questions at somebody else, but if they're not really into it, okay, that's going to be a problem. Networking skills are different. Networking is knowing who to talk to and how to talk to them. Okay, how to reach them. That's more of the networking skills. And when you do reach them, what to say, that kind of thing. Okay, it's a little bit different. Now you can do that usually in written form, or you could do it in, face-to-face format. It varies. The medium and the channel varies, but basically it's knowing who to talk to, how to reach them, what to say. That's different from having a conversation with somebody that they enjoy. Okay, so that's the difference between conversational skills and networking skills. I was surprised at this, written communication skills. This is extremely important. And I'm sure I'm not completely alone when I say that I get a lot of written communications from people. And when people start, they send me a message and they can't string a sentence together. And there's typos and grammatical errors in not only in the first sentence, but in the first few words. That makes a very bad first impression. Okay? What it's communicating is it's saying that, I don't care enough to do this properly, or I don't know enough to do this properly. I don't know which one's worse. So that's very important. Here's another question. What's worse? Recruiters who ghost me? Recruiters who don't believe me? Recruiters who don't respect my qualifications? Or recruiters who don't understand my qualifications? If you have ever had any of these happen to you, you might have some strong opinions on it. The winner was recruiters who ghost me. Yeah, that's very common these days. If it was me and I was writing this and I was answering it, I would have chosen this one, recruiters who don't believe me. I have encountered that before. You go to a job interview and they ask you some questions and you say, yes, I've done that, or I know that, or whatever it is. And you're using examples off your resume and you're saying well, I did that for 2 years and so I know how to do this. And I've encountered personally, early in my career, I've encountered recruiters that just don't believe you. They're sitting there looking very skeptical and they don't believe you when you try to make a case for yourself. I find that that's basically the first sign of an impossible situation. It's a no-win situation. So, but I mean, let's face it, they're all pretty bad. Okay, the one from yesterday. I only ever apply for positions that explicitly post the compensation. I've gotten a lot of comments under my videos talking about, why would anyone apply to a job that they don't post the salary or the wage or the compensation? And, in a few places in the world, that's now, it's now the law that, employers have to post this. But as I understand it, still in the vast majority of places in the world, it's not the law, and it's far more common to get jobs that do not explicitly post the compensation or the compensation range. If you work in government or a few isolated pockets and industries that, that's how they operate, then fair enough. But the other flip side to this is that they may post the compensation, they may post a range, but is that range accurate? That's another question, right? So I got a lot of angry comments, people saying, well, why would you ever apply to a job that doesn't post the range? Well, most people do, and kind of most people have to. So I threw this out there to see, and sure enough, 63% of you guys said, that this is false. You apply to positions where they don't post the compensation. That is a common thing. Get my course, by the way. Shameless plug. And the one for today, okay, the question I threw out today in the polls, my biggest problem is writing a resume, applying for jobs, interviewing well, communicating with recruiters, and networking with people who could help me. This surprised the hell out of me, because whenever I talk about this, or whenever I put out videos on it, nobody watches them. So, that leads me to believe that this was not a hot topic. Apparently, you guys are saying that, you want to learn about networking and how that works. The problem is that there's a little bit to it. And it's hard to present in, say, 2 minutes. You can take away, here, just do this and it'll work. It's hard to do that. There's a lot to set it up. but interviewing well was the runner-up. That didn't surprise me. Now, this is the votes so far, okay? This has only been out for 2 hours. So if you are subscribed to my channel, and if you have, I think you have to turn the notification bell on, but you get these. You get these every day. So you can go and vote now, and you can add your voice to this, and we will revisit it next week. And there you go. That's the polls for this week. I see there's 22 of you guys here. Thank you for being here. This is a Q&A. We're going to get to your questions here. And let's see. There's a little bit of a backlog so far. So someone says, hi, what about a cover letter for a junior position? What is your advice? In what way? Like, is it good, or how to do it? Like, what are you talking about? Well, it depends. If they ask for a cover letter, obviously you need to do a cover letter. If they don't ask for a cover letter, usually if you send in an application by email, if that's the format over which you're submitting it, the body of the email will serve as a cover letter. It's going to basically say, it's going to do a greeting and say hello. It's going to say who you are. It's going to say what job you're applying for. Okay. And then some kind of closing, or you say basically, please find my resume attached or my application attached, whatever you're sending. And then a closing. Thank you very much. And if you should need anything else, please let me know. Here's my contact information, something like that. Okay. That's kind of the standard thing. Now you have the option of highlighting a couple of key points that you have. For example, if they said in the job description that they're looking for these requirements, these qualifications, you could draw those out in the email and say that, I applied for this. I'm applying for this because I have this, and I have this. So that can sometimes get the receiver's attention. Okay, whether it's a recruiter or otherwise, and it encourages them to actually open the attachments and read your application. Okay. But if I were doing it, I would emphasize brevity. Don't make this like an entire page long. It should be the equivalent of a paragraph. Okay. Possibly a little more, but that's it. That would be my advice. Abeb Cero says, thanks for the brilliant ideas. Okay, not a problem. That's what I'm here for. And hopefully they're brilliant. Not all of them are, but I do my best. Dumpling Abroad says, I've got an interview tomorrow. Perfect stream to get me ready. Okay, well, good. Best of luck, Dumpling Abroad. It also makes me wonder if I should be applying for a job in which the description uses there or there. So what you're implying there is that they misused or they misspelled that word. Yeah, that doesn't inspire people a lot of confidence. As we go into the future, spelling and grammar skills are getting worse on average, but it still separates the professional people from the non-professional people. That's part of doing it. If you are submitting something that's very important, like a job application, and you spell their words incorrectly. I mean, what kind of surprises me is that spell checking is built into, I believe, every major web browser, if I'm not mistaken, now. Not to mention it comes, I think you can get it for free one way or another. So it's not like it's hard to come by. You can do spelling and grammar checker, and at the very least you would run your written writing, your written writing, there's the word for today. You'd run your the text that you've written through some kind of spelling and grammar checker as like a bare minimum form of proofreading before you post it publicly or you apply for a job. If you don't, it signals that, like I said, either you don't know how to write correctly, which signals an issue sometimes, a lot of times, or you don't care enough to proofread what you've written. And that also would be bad, right? So yes, spell things correctly. Use a spell checker. If English is not your primary language, that's fine. Just use one of the spelling and grammar tools that actually works and it's set up correctly. And it should take care of that. So yeah, that does not inspire a lot of confidence, Dumpling Abroad. Now, what that's really reflecting on, it's reflecting on the individual that wrote that job posting. It's not necessarily reflecting on the organization that much. It is possible that they just had a junior person do this and that person didn't take any care. But it's actually a good company and a good job waiting for you on the other side if you persist with it. That is possible. So I would just proceed. Inflatable Sparrow says, hi, I live in Valencia City, Spain, where it is, I get that would be Valencia, where it is incredibly hard to get a job interview, let alone a job. I am puzzled. I see that the city functions, but the job opportunities are nowhere to be seen. That's usually because they're all in the hidden job market. Okay, so if this is all new to you, here's a crash course, okay? The vast majority of jobs exist, but they are not posted, okay? That usually includes the more desirable jobs, the better jobs, okay? They are filled before they get to the stage where they are posted publicly because it is easier, cheaper, and better to fill them through networking than by interviewing strangers, okay? So that's where the jobs are. You need to learn how to tap the hidden job market. That means you need to be able to access all those jobs. And the short answer for how to do that is through networking. It was just in my polls, right? It was referring directly to this. My biggest problem is networking with people who could help me. Yeah, because that's the key to getting a lot of good jobs. Okay, a lot of good jobs are filled before they need to be posted publicly because you have a lot of people that are willing and ready to do them. And people would rather hire people that they have some kind of knowledge of or connection with, because it's like getting a personal reference. You know that person isn't a criminal. You know that person isn't insane. You know that person is not lying about their entire life history and everything on their resume isn't a lie. You already know that, right? You've had some interactions with them before, and presumably you thought they were good. So that's why, all things being equal, people would rather hire someone like that than a complete and total stranger, which is higher risk. Okay? So that's where the jobs are. There are many methods to get a job. Networking is one of them. Applying for posted jobs is another. Within networking, there's many, many different things you can do within that I don't know what you call it, that method. So learn about that. Find a technique that works for you. And I wish you the best of luck. Also, I've got a lot of free videos on how to do parts of that. And I've also got a course right here, my Get Hired course, that walks you through the entire thing from beginning to end and gives you templates and, things like this that make it easy. Okay. I put that together for that express purpose. Okay. It's like it feels a lot like trying to explain nuclear physics to somebody in like 5 minutes. It's just very hard to get into and give someone something that's solid and it's a good takeaway. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of principles you got to understand. And, so I'd recommend that, but study up on it and don't take all your advice from me. Don't take my word for everything. Go and corroborate this. You will find that this is true. WCK Champion. Hi, Bill. I'm definitely interested in new network videos. If you feel like it, please. Awesome as always. Thank you, Marco. Okay. I will take that into consideration. Thanks, Marco. MM says, how do you feel about people using ChatGPT to write resumes? It's like saying, how do you feel about Google being used as a tool to look you up online? Technology keeps moving. It always has, and it always will. It doesn't change the fundamentals of, how to get a job and stuff like that. It changes the details and it changes the tools. And in terms of, like, if you're talking specifically about, like sort of the low tier of jobs and how to get those jobs, where you, like, for example, recruiters post a job and you get like a couple hundred applicants, and then they use applicant tracking software to filter out resumes. So they're not even being read by a human, and the computer will look for certain things and then filter out a lot of them before they get to the recruiter. Like when that came in, people were taken aback by that. It was a little bit of a shift, right? That's a response to the fact that people started posting jobs on the internet, and it was so easy all of a sudden to post jobs. Can you imagine? Can anyone here imagine applying for jobs when you had to use paper and envelopes and stamps and send it through the, like the snail mail, through traditional mail, physical mail, whatever you call that? That's how it used to be. And then the internet came along, and then all of a sudden you could apply for 100 times the amount of jobs that you could before in the same time. And it didn't cost you anything, really, as opposed to paying for paper and stamps and printing and all that. So when that started on the internet, the response from the other side was, okay, let's do applicant tracking software and filter out a lot of these applications before they even get to us. So new technology comes in, and then there's a response to it. Chat GPT comes in, and there's a response to it. Okay? It's funny because what I've heard about Chat GPT, at least in terms of disruption, one of the things is students are using it to do homework, to write essays and papers and things like this. And so, education being the real forward-thinking people and that can totally handle change well, they've already sort of gone into panic mode, and they've implemented changes like making it required that students, when they submit a homework assignment or something that's in written form, like an essay, they then have to do an oral presentation where they prove that they know what's in the essay and they can answer questions about it, right? So things move, right? And it doesn't change the fundamentals. Some people will get possibly a little bit of an advantage by jumping on this technology early, but and it's good that most recruiters are not, how can I put this, the most intelligent people ever, but it doesn't change any of the fundamentals. It's just a new tool. It's like it's already disrupting SEO, right? As I'm given to understand, because it's writing all kinds of fake articles online and stuff that make it look like people are talking about a certain thing when they're not, right? But then you get the response. Google is responding to that, and other people are responding to that. So you don't really get much of an advantage in terms of cheating, in terms of using it like in a less than honest way. Jack Alexander says, through your networking, I was able to get interviews with 2 dealerships this Friday. However, the interview times offered were near each other. What do you recommend to ensure I get both done? I don't know if I can really answer that, Jack. I mean, it depends how close they are. Like you're talking about, you have to be in 2 physical locations within a close time proximity. That's what you're saying. And it's hard to get from one to the other. That's what I'm kind of assuming. Well, you have a couple of options there, obviously. You could ask one of them to reschedule and just say, I've got this thing that I just cannot miss, And what really would help is if you are currently employed, you can use the excuse that it's something with your current employer. Like they're not aware that I'm going for job interviews, and I can't tell them I need to skip this for a job interview. So if we could move that would be really useful. I mean, that's the only thing I can suggest if I understand this correctly. Hopefully that helps. Vasilis, if I'm saying that right, says, hi. For me, culture in a company and work environment is much more important than salary. Do you agree? Well, of course I agree. Most people agree. Yes. And it's true. I mean, you can pay people, well, this isn't worth as much anymore, but you could pay people $100,000 a year and they still hate their job and they still are not inspired to do it. You have to get them to work. And I've had to deal with that. I've had to manage tradespeople that are paid like over $100,000 a year, and it's still not enough to really motivate them, apparently. So yeah, the culture is all important, and things that managers can do or bosses can do to improve the culture cost nothing. Just giving somebody a compliment, when they do something awesome, telling them that it's awesome. Say, wow, that's great. You're awesome. You know your stuff. We're lucky to have you. How often do you get a compliment like that? Not very often. But when you do, for a lot of people, it really it really renews your passion for working in that place and being around those people. Inflatable Sparrow says, thank you so much for your answer. Not a problem, Inflatable Sparrow. Oh yeah, you were the Valencia. Not a problem. Yeah, listen, don't take my word for any of this. A lot of people are skeptical. This is the other thing I encountered. When I started talking a couple years ago on YouTube about, the hidden job market and how networking is the way to do it. And you don't network with people you might intuitively think you would. You don't go to recruiters, for instance. That's pointless. A lot of times also, I don't recommend going to the hiring managers directly. I recommend going to the people at the top, the executives, for a variety of reasons. And that's also the most effective method. But you try and tell people this, and they're so resistant to the idea. They don't know anything about doing that, but they're positive that it will never work, right? That's what you're up against. So it's a very tough sell for a lot of people, especially young people. But that is the way to do it. And it produces spectacular results, as a lot of people have attested to. I mean, I've built an entire consulting business on doing that. So, I know what I'm talking about here, and you can't tell me it doesn't work because I've done it many, many times. I've taught other people how to do it in university. I've gotten students to do this. Armand says, how to get fired or resign in the most polite way, leaving you a door open. Why would you want a door open? Like you're leaving. When you leave, hey, here's what's going on. When you leave, this is the situation. They have said that we think you're good. We could offer this job to many people and they'd all be happy to get it. But instead of giving it to them, we're giving it to you because we think you're the one. Right? That's what they've done for you. And then after a certain amount of time, 2 weeks later, 1 month later, 1 year later, 20 years later, you're saying, you can take your job and shove it because it's not worth it for me. I would much rather do something else, and it's more profitable for me to do something else. Okay, so it's a betrayal. Okay, that's really what it is. Now, people don't get into all that and they say all these things, but that's essentially what it is. It's a signal that no, I'd rather be somewhere else than work here. Okay? It's like a friend telling you, you know what? We've been hanging out now for a couple of years, on and off. But in all honesty, we're done. I'd rather go hang out with them, this other person, than ever hang out with you again. Okay? That's essentially what you're doing. Okay? So you're also demonstrating that you're the type of person that jumps ship. You're the type of person that if they give you a chance, you'll throw it back in their face and you won't deliver. Okay? That's really kind of what's going on there. Okay? Now, I know I'm making it sound very negative and very dramatic, but leaving a door open, okay, that's more of the exception than the rule. Most situations, people are not going to want you to come back. They are not going to consider you if you want to come back, okay, because of what you've demonstrated. If you come back, you're the type of person that leaves. You accept a job and then you quit. Now, I'm being very melodramatic about this to illustrate a point, okay? The assumption is that in most situations, a door will probably not be left open for you, okay? Because you're doing this. Even if you try and, kind of have a nice, polite exit and say, I'm very honored to have worked here and I've really, have enjoyed working with all of you and especially you, my boss, who gave me a chance and believed in me. It's, gets you right here, brings a tear to your eye. You might say those things and that's nice. It's a nice gesture, but you're basically demonstrating that, no, I'd rather be somewhere else. And as soon as another opportunity comes along, I'm the type of person that takes it. Okay? So a lot of people will not consider you in the future. Okay? There are exceptions, especially if you have a very good, say a friendship with your boss or people there. Okay? It happens. It's been known to happen. But it's not something you can expect as the default. Okay? So that's kind of how that works. But listen, here's some good news, okay, Armand. There's so many job opportunities out there. There's so many employment opportunities out there. Okay, you're sort of being blacklisted, as it were, from one of like thousands and thousands. Okay, so it's really not that big of a loss. Okay, and also, how would you feel if you left, presumably to go and do something better, for it to be a step up for you in some way, and then you got to come back? You know, it feels like a step down. It feels like a reversal. It feels like you made a mistake. It feels like your decision-making skills are bad. Okay, so, you know, you don't want your boss to blacklist you and tell everyone that they know that, you know, do not hire this person. They are terrible. You don't want that. So it's good to be polite and to be professional. But expecting to be able to come back is kind of, usually it's not in the cards. Okay? That's just my opinion based on my experience and based on my observations. Other people may see it differently, but that's how it's worked in my experience. So hopefully that makes sense. That's just my take on it. King Polar 123 says, I feel like I am ready for a director position, experience and education, but I'm having problems finding the right position in my locale. Any suggestions? Okay, so by director, I'm assuming you mean manager of managers, right? Like that, the director level. Okay, that's kind of unofficially what people take that word to mean, as opposed to a board of directors. Usually those positions are on the hidden job market. You get them through networking. It's very rare that they post a position publicly that says, hello, we're looking for this like executive. Apply here, must have 2 to 3 years of this, you know. And then you talk to a recruiter and they ask you, you know, tell me about yourself. You know, it's usually doesn't work like that. Usually that's done through networking. Okay. So you need to be looking in the right place, and I would get into the world of networking, and that's where there's a chance of you being made aware of opening for a position like that. LYMOZ says, hi, Bill. Hi, Limoz, if that's how you say it. It's good to have you here. Paul Charette says, hello, I am returning home to Canada after living in Korea for 23 years. How would you suggest I make my experience relatable or valued to employers who may feel I'm out of touch with Canada? Cheers. Well, like usual, the way this, in my opinion, this is, first of all, I got to put a disclaimer and say that this is not my core competency. Okay, there are resources, better resources than me, that can help you with immigration and, like, you know, getting a job in another country and stuff like that. That's not kind of what I have a ton of experience with. But I'll tell you what I know and what my opinion is, for what it's worth. I think that that's the kind of thing that is demonstrated more than it's, you know, than they go by you talking about it, right? So, for example, it might say on your resume that you have this experience in Korea, and I'm assuming South Korea here. You know, if you come in there and, you know, there's no issue with language, there's no issue with your conversational skills, you're charismatic, and then if the conversation turns to a technical nature about your industry, you know, you can hold your own, and it shows that you know your stuff. I don't think there's going to be like any issues with you're out of touch. You know, my understanding, assuming we're talking about South Korea, my understanding is that it has a very good reputation. It's forward thinking. You know, it's a developed country that has its act together. So I don't think anyone, the typical employer from Canada, is going to look down on experience in South Korea. The only issue that you might face, like anybody faces when they're coming in from another country, is that what employers would like to see is home country experience, like I guess host country experience. So I don't know if you're from Canada, but if you have experience here they can get references here that are easier to check, easier to verify, things like this. Okay, so that may be an issue, and that issue is one that is present for any immigrant. Okay, host country experience is very important, and it's important for that reason. If somebody says, okay, here's my references and here's my qualifications, and they're in another language, and in order to verify them, you have to contact people on the other side of the globe, and you're not familiar with who these people are or these institutions or these companies, or, you don't know what you're getting into. It's an unknown. So you get an uncertainty, and that's perceived as a higher risk candidate. So what can be very useful is having some kind of host country experience, even if it's just like a menial job you only had for like a month, something you can give them that, like, look, you can say, this person worked with me, they hired me, they worked with me, they're local, here's the reference. Okay. So if you're having issues finding a job, maybe go for something like that, just as a temporary thing, so that it allows you to get your foot in the door, and people won't hold a lack of host country experience against you. Okay, that's just my 2 cents on that. But as I say, I mean, don't just go on my advice here. Like, get a variety of different sources on that, especially people that know more about immigration and the details of it, especially coming from places like Korea. There might be some idiosyncrasies there that if you knew it, it could help you. Where are we here? Mihai says, I see that the Armand Ocus comment in the video is something else than what's on the chat. However, I don't... What? I don't see... Okay, this comment got split up here. I see in the comment that there's something else than other that's in the chat before his line. However, I don't think it applies to today's discussion. Thank you. Well, listen, this is a general Q&A about careers, essentially. Applying for jobs, any aspect of it, right? So it's pretty open to different types of questions. I do some live streams on Monday and Thursday that are about specific topics, like side hustles. So we usually don't take like job interview questions in that, but here, I mean, it's all good. Vasilis says, isn't work experience the most important chapter in a CV more than education? It can be, but not necessarily. I mean, let me ask you something. If you're interviewing for a position as a medical doctor, is it important that you have a medical degree? Of course it is. It's all important. It's a deal breaker if you don't. So it depends what you're talking about, right? If, however, you're talking about someone who's got a bachelor degree from a university, and it's like one of these borderline useless bachelor degrees where, anybody who enrolls graduates kind of thing, and doesn't really teach you anything useful, and you have no skills or abilities, then in that case, yes, experience will be more important than that. There's education, there's education, and there's education. It isn't just any education is the same as any other education. There's stuff that's a lot harder to attain than other things, right? And stuff that teaches you more than other things, right? And stuff that teaches you more specific skills for a certain job than other things. So, there's a lot of factors there. You can't generalize like this. It's going to vary. And also depends who you're talking to. If the hiring manager is basically uneducated, they've got high school and nothing else, but they've been in their industry for 30 years, obviously they are going to put much more weight on your experience. If, however, you're talking to someone who's got a PhD and has done all kinds of research all over the world and knows all kinds of things and has written all these different books and that sort of stuff, but in terms of actual work experience in employment with a company, they've got maybe 2 years and they're like 60 years old, obviously they're going to value your education much more than your experience, right? So, I mean, it really varies. Limaz says, I have a question, Bill. How can I start side hustle and not be treated like a company or small business? Because in my country, there are tons of taxes that come with starting a business. Well, I can't give you tax advice for some other country. Your question is, how can I start a side hustle and not be treated like a company? Well, I mean, first of all, are you talking legally? Because legally, you can be a sole proprietorship. That's not a company, right? So you will not be regarded as a company in any official source, including taxes. In terms of the perception, okay, if you are working at a day job at an employer, but you've also got a side hustle on the side, I would just not mention it. Like, they don't need to know that. And if you do mention it, it can raise a bunch of issues, not least of which is they think that your loyalty lies with your side hustle and not with the day job that they're employing you for. Okay, so I would keep it a secret. Like, it's an element of your personal life that you don't need to disclose to anyone. You know, I mean, unless there's any mitigating circumstances in there, that you haven't mentioned. That's how I'd handle it. Yeah, and as I say, I mean, you don't necessarily need to incorporate. So if you're not incorporated, it's not a company and it shouldn't have any official effect on taxes. Okay. But, you know, when it comes to that stuff, get more solid legal or accounting or tax advice from someone in your country who knows the tax law. You know what I'm saying? Like, if that's the issue, don't come to me for that. Okay. I don't even know what country you're in. So, I mean, get someone who knows something. That would be like a tax accountant or a tax lawyer. They would be able to help you with that if that's what your concern is. Paul says, I'm Canadian, but thanks for the answer. Okay, Paul, no, you were the Korea one. Yeah, okay. Yeah, but I believe everything I said about that, Paul, is still valid, because if you've been working in Korea for 23 years, they're still going to need, excuse me, I am still under the weather. They're still going to need references for you as an employee that come from Canada. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what they're going to look for. And if you don't have that, it's still going to be an issue whether or not you are a Canadian citizen and, you know, you might have been born here. Okay, so that's the point I want to get through. Vasilis says, by the way, Vasilis is a Greek sounding name to Bill. Okay. Yeah, Bill is many different things in many different languages. It's Wilhelm in German. It's Guillaume in French. I believe it's Guillermo in Spanish. So Vasilis, I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. I guess that's the Greek version. I learned something new. Oh, man. A little Red Bull will put out that fire. Here's to healthy living. Okay. Vasilis says, yes, I agree with your answer. However, I studied electrical and computer engineering and work in IT industry. Generally, in IT, work experience matters more, although my field of studies is difficult. Okay. Yeah, you know, it's funny because many, many years ago, my mother was actually a chemical engineer. And she got a degree in engineering. And it was when the IT industry was just sort of starting. It wasn't even called IT. It was called like data processing or something. And there were no qualifications or certifications in IT. People just said, hey, you know, you've got a degree in engineering. You want to do this computer programming? And it's like, sure. So there you go. Now you're in IT. You know, those days are over, of course. Now it's much more regimented, you know, and qualifications do matter a lot. You know, I would argue when people say like, oh, you know, experience matters, I would say, you know, yeah, experience, but accomplishments matter, you know? And in IT, one of the great things about that is that if you want to do something on your own, it's one of the easiest industries to do something on your own, you know? So that's also another option there. Dumpling Abroad says, what's the best way to bypass "you don't have enough experience" as excuse not to hire me from retail to admin bookkeeper despite having transferable skills? It depends how they say that to you. I'm just going to reduce the brightness of my camera once again because the sun comes out and then everything gets brighter. Here we go. And I think I messed with my blinds there. Some kids were playing outside my window here the other day, and I had to mess with my blinds to open them, and they don't block out the light as much anymore. Anyway, what the hell was I talking about? Okay, the best, you don't have enough experience. If they say that to you in a job interview, it's a lie. Okay, if you didn't actually have enough experience and they could tell that from your resume, you wouldn't even be at the interview. Okay, so that's a lie. They're just asking that to you to see how you'll react, possibly, and also for you to back up, to answer that by stating your experience, which they just want to verify. Okay, so that's in an interview. That's what's going on there. Now, in terms of before the interview, okay, if you've sent in an application or a resume and they don't give you an interview for this reason, they say, okay, I'm sorry you don't have enough experience, so I'm sorry, there's not going to be an interview. Okay, that's the end. Now, if you maintain that you do have enough experience and you can do the job, okay, a couple of things. First of all, number one, obviously the decision maker, presumably a recruiter, there's a difference of opinion between you and them. Now, who's right? You're probably right, okay? I mean, that's going to vary, but a lot of times you're right because you're the one that's done the job. The recruiter hasn't. The recruiter knows HR. So if they're recruiting for an engineering job and they're telling you, I'm sorry, you don't have enough engineering experience to do this, and you have worked in engineering and you've said, no, I do have enough experience. I know what those people do in that role and I can do it, right? I would say you know better than them, okay? But that's immaterial in this case because they're the decision maker. They're the gatekeeper. Okay. Now, if this is an isolated occurrence, okay, just keep on keeping on. Go to the next person. They maybe will have a different opinion. As I'm sure you get people making decisions about who's a better candidate than whom, and they don't have a clue what they're talking about. That's a common thing in this business. But if you're consistently encountering this, people feel that you can't do the job because officially you need to have this, and you don't have it, okay, but that that's crap and that you could do the job. That's where you go through networking. You talk to a hiring manager face to face. They see who you are. You have a conversation about your industry and the tools and the skills and the techniques and all that. And they see, yeah, you know what you're talking about. You've got some good skills, and they see your other qualities like, oh, this person is also great to deal with. I enjoy interacting with them. That's like a preview of what it would be like to work with them. They have great communication skills. They seem to be passionate about doing this type of work, and they've got the initiative to initiate a conversation with me about it. Okay? So that can usually circumvent a lot of these silly mechanical requirements that maybe a recruiter is going on lower down. Okay? So that's the other value of networking. It can get around all kinds of, official roadblocks, right? And I've said this plenty of times. The classic example is if you're changing careers. The first question a recruiter is going to have for a job you just applied for is, how many years of experience do you have doing this? And you're going to say 0 because you're changing careers. I used to be a bus driver and now I'm doing this. Now I want to do this. Be a romance novelist or, write copy or so, whatever. So by definition, you have 0 experience in this new industry. But if you have skills, if you have knowledge, if you have passion, if you have some ability, okay, you can circumvent that whole issue by talking directly to a hiring manager or somebody above a hiring manager. And when they see your passion and your skills and your knowledge, and they see how great you are as a person, they could say, you know what? This person has earned a right to be considered for this job because they're here, They've taken the initiative to do this. They seem really good to me. They seem like they know their stuff. So they need to be considered properly. And that's how you circumvent those things. That's the way people change careers. They pretty much, 100% of the time, they pretty much do it through some form of networking. Okay? Because telling someone that you have zero experience, at all in like an industry, usually they're going to eliminate you based on that, right? So that's what I have to say about that. If it's consistently, if this is the response you're consistently getting, do networking. If this is a one-time only thing, then just keep going. Chemtech says, hi, I was a private entrepreneur up until recently, business management consultant and financial advisor. How would you recommend putting it into my CV, and how do companies value that I'm an ex-entrepreneur? Well, they don't. That's the problem. Okay. There's exceptions. Okay. Never say never. There are exceptions, but generally they look unfavorably or less favorably on that. I'm sorry to say. The reason is because they can't verify it, or it's very hard to verify it. Because you could, for all they know, you could have been unemployed for 5 years, and then when you start applying for jobs again, you say, oh, well, I had my own business, right? Well, there's some things you can do to verify it. There's some checks and things you can do. I know it varies by country, but there's a limit to what they can do. And also, there's no way for them to verify your skills, even if they could verify that you were employed. You filed taxes, you brought in money, if they could verify that, they still can't verify your abilities or your skills. It's an unknown quantity. Working at any company that they've never heard of is an unknown quantity. Okay? Now, you and I both know that being an entrepreneur teaches you a hell of a lot of things. It's like you've woken up and you've learned about life and business in a way that these people will never know, because they've never actually been out on their own having to generate money out of thin air. They've never had to do that. So they have no conception of what that involves and what types of skills you have to do and what personality traits you have to adopt in order to do that. Okay, it's extremely valuable experience. I would hire someone like that in a heartbeat. Okay, but if you're trying to convince a recruiter, okay, someone who's never done anything against the grain in their entire life, they've always done the default career thing in their entire life, how do you convince them that those skills are valuable? A lot of times you can't. So once again, here's another example of something that you overcome with some form of networking. If you could talk directly to a hiring manager and have a conversation about the industry, where it's going, about skills, what skills are important, what skills are valuable, what skills are they looking for, blah, 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 and why, and you could demonstrate that you understand all of that and then some, and you're great to deal with, that earns you a right to be considered. And a lot of people will put you at the top of the resume pile, as it were. Okay? So that's how you get around this. But companies do not value, generally speaking, companies do not value entrepreneurial experience because it's unverifiable and they don't see the value in it. In their mind, it's like, oh, you were basically unemployed. That's what they hear when you say, oh, I ran my own company and where I was quite successful for a few years. They hear, oh, you couldn't get a job anywhere, so you kind of scrounged by on your own. I don't know if that's really a great thing to mention. We all know that that's crap, but that's how they hear it, unfortunately. Now, if you were to talk to an executive about that, say, hey, look, I'm trying to get a job as an accountant or whatever, but, I had my own accounting business. I carved out a niche where I was serving these clients and I was in private practice for, this amount of years. And, I provided these services and I then got into this other area because my clients said that was in demand. And I listened to that and I learned those skills and then I applied them. It's like, to an executive, this is like, you're exactly what we're looking for. Someone who understands these concepts, Okay. So networking. This thing jumped again. Where was I? Here, Datalore Q says, or Datalore, right? Datalore Q says, hi, Bill. What would be the best way to get hired if you have been out of your career field and out of a full-time job for several years after being let go? I was talking college courses. Okay, I don't understand. So you were out of your career field and out of a full-time job for several years after being let go. Oh, you mean you were taking college courses? Okay, so what's the best way to get hired? Well, there's many different methods, okay? The default method is to apply for posted jobs online. That's the most default method that people do. It's not the best method. It's actually one of the worst in terms of the results and the types of jobs that you get that way. There's also networking. There's like a whole bunch of different methods. You could apply in person. You could do, depending on what you're doing, you could do volunteering and stuff, depending on what industry you're trying to get into. You could do volunteering as a way in. You could take contract jobs, as a way in. There's all kinds of things. I've covered a lot of them on my channel. I have separate videos for like sort of each of the techniques. And I have my course that just covers absolutely everything from beginning to end, including networking. So look into those. I mean, I can't really give you a lot of information in like a minute, on like how to do all of those, but there's many different methods. I would look beyond a typical job search campaign. Is you apply for posted jobs, but you also do a lot of other things. Okay. You don't just apply for posted job after posted job. Okay. Posted jobs are good if you have a sort of standard career path. Like, let's say you do something standard. Okay, I don't know, you're a pilot. You worked here, and then you worked here, and then you worked here, and then you worked here as a pilot, right? What makes you think you can be a pilot? Well, I've got 10 years experience being a pilot. Okay, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a standard career path. But if you're doing something unconventional or non-standard, or your career is kind of zigzagging around, then networking is the better way to do that. Because recruiters tend to only value experience directly in the job that you're applying for. And if that's not what you have, they tend to be skeptical of it. Okay, so there's many other things you can do, and there's ways you can elevate yourself above the crowd too with some of these alternate techniques. Darkman Jeff says, I've been at my current position for 8 months, just received an opportunity to interview for another position for 15 to 18K jump. Too soon to try to go for that new position? No, not necessarily. First of all, it depends what industry you're in. Some industries move really quickly. So yeah, 8 months is reasonable to take on some responsibilities. And if you've kicked ass and you've done a great job in that role, and they see potential in you, then maybe it's reasonable to move up. In other positions, that may not apply, right? A lot of positions, you just can't learn everything there is to know in 8 months. You could get a good overview of it, but maybe you need to go a bit deeper than that to then move up here, right? So it depends. I can't really answer that for you one way or another. It depends on the details. But it is conceivable, okay? It's not impossible. I would look more on the people involved. Like if you've got a boss that believes in you, and if you know the boss for this new position, and if you know what their opinion is on you, they look favorably at you, that would be a factor too. Datalore Q says, I should mention I am 48 and have been in the IT career field for over 16 years. Okay. Datalore, you were, full-time for several years without being let go. Yeah, I mean, IT moves very quickly. And I mean, I used to be in IT something like 20 years ago, and a lot has changed since I was in it. So I'm kind of a bit out of touch with the details of how it works in that industry specifically. But, I understand in some circles it moves very, very fast, and they don't really regard experience from a long time ago as useful. They only look at recent experience and things like this. I mean, I don't know. So it depends. You need to find an employer that's a match for you. If you're not the standard thing, that you get, you're not like some young person, with the courses in the latest languages and all this stuff under their belt. I understand now why you said, taking college courses, because you're refreshing your skill set, you're updating it. I would think that would be the best of both worlds. You've got experience, but you also have updated your skills. So you've got the latest sort of knowledge. I mean, I would have thought that would be a win-win, but yeah. Try to apply for posted jobs, go through standard channels. That's what posted jobs are. And then if that doesn't work, do networking, where you go around the standard channels. You don't go to recruiters. You don't go to the HR organization. You go to hiring managers, or preferably the executives. If the executive believes in you and says, I had a very positive meeting with this person, I think they've really got what it takes. I think they've got the right attitude and the right sort of energy that we want in this organization. They've got passion to do this kind of work. They've got great conversational skills. They're very charismatic, and they seem to be very dedicated and knowledgeable. I think we could use that type of person in this organization. They can make that happen. They sit on top of the HR organization. They can tell recruiters what to do. They can tell hiring managers what to do. At least they have a direct or indirect influence. So you wow those people, and good things follow. And they're not unapproachable. Some people think these people are like unapproachable. I mean, they're like me. I was the CEO of a small to mid-sized company. I mean, it's like, is talking to me super intimidating? Hopefully it isn't. These people are always, to some degree, on the lookout for talent. Every organization, no matter what it is, experiences some amount of employee turnover. And it's sometimes regarded as a good thing. You weed your garden, so you have, the right people in there. And they're always directly or indirectly looking for good people. So if they come across a good person, a lot of times, that can lead to something. Okay, that's why we do it. Here we go with member question. So Thoch22, and thank you for your support, Thoch22. I hope I'm saying that right. Or Toch. Have directed an outpatient consulting clinic for 15 years and providing direct services to clients, and I'm looking to transition to account management or sales. Having a difficult time getting an interview. Okay. So you've directed now. Okay, well, the first question I would have, Toch, is, first of all, what position are you applying for? Are you applying for the position you mentioned here? You're directing an outpatient counseling clinic? Or are you applying for other positions, like, maybe lower down or higher up? Because if it's lower down, something you might run into is they assume that you're overqualified. Okay, if you've been the boss, but now you're working down here, or saying you want to work down here, that can raise an eyebrow as to why, and are you overqualified? If you're applying for positions higher, okay, you get another different problem, which is like, well, what makes you think you're ready for doing this, right? Okay. So once again, it seems like if you've directed, a counseling clinic, you're in the realm of like, where those jobs might be, you might access them through networking as opposed to getting interviews. You know what I'm saying? Like with recruiters. Okay. Now, if you're changing careers, like you're saying you're wanting to move to account management and sales, like, first of all, is that at the same level? It seems like it's kind of down here, but it's sales. Okay. So like either internal sales or, or outside sales. Once again, that's like changing careers. Basically, it could be, I imagine they would regard that as changing careers, even though it's technically not, but it sounds like it might be for a lot of like recruiters and things. It's a different job description. So they might regard that as changing careers, in which case, yes, you would have to do that through networking. Okay. So that's what I would say. Okay. And I imagine for something like that, you'd also be looking in not just your hometown or region. You might expand the geographic area of your job search. It could be across the entire country. I don't know what country you're in, but it could be nationwide, or it could be global. It could be multinational. I mean, depending on what your goals are. So in that case, yeah, networking is kind of the way to go. You would contact people. In that case, you would do a lot of written networking stuff, like using things like LinkedIn and stuff like that. Depending what world you operate in, if there's industry events like trade shows and sort of conferences and things like that, depending, I don't know, you would also go to those events and do some networking there. So there's different options for you depending on the details of what you're trying to do and how it's regarded. Okay, I don't know the details of the outpatient consulting clinic industry, so I can't give you a lot of the details, but that's the stuff I would investigate. Okay, as opposed to looking up job postings and applying to them with applications. Okay, that's where you're going to run into issues where people look at your resume and they go, I don't see a lot of sales experience here, even though you were the director, right? Which is kind of silly because you're sort of sitting on top of all of that, right? But that's how they're going to regard it. So networking, that cuts right through these issues. Hopefully that helps. I have a course on it. I've got some free videos that cover areas of it on my YouTube channel. So check those out and just do your research in that area, in that direction. Okay. And you should produce some results relatively soon if you go in that direction. Semi says, hi, sir. Although I am from the Netherlands, I have used your advices over here and they came out great. Just came by and wanted to say thank you. Well, thank you very much, Semi. That makes me feel really good. And I'm glad that you're getting value from it. Camilla. Oh man, there's a whole other screen of questions here. Whoa. Okay, I gotta pick up the pace here. Camilla, I have a question. On the job application, there was a question. What was your previous salary, start salary, end salary for all the positions? I think it's private information. Yes, it is. It is. The only reason they ask you that is A, because they have no clue what your value is. And so they think that by doing this, they will be able to assess your value. It's a very lazy and inaccurate way of doing it. But that's how these people have decided to do it because they can. Now, if it's a required field in an online form, you have no choice but to put something. Okay. And I'm not going to tell you what to do. You could decide for yourself if you want to disclose confidential information or you want to massage the truth, as we say. That is up to you. Okay. It's information that is really none of their business. Okay. And depending on what country you are in, that may even be illegal. In some places, it's illegal for them to ask. In other places, most other places, as far as I know, in almost all other places, I've never heard of a way for someone to verify your salary without your consent. Like they can't go to a website and look it up. If they're outside of your employer's organization, there's no way they have access to that. They have no way to verify anything you say. So you're absolutely right. So if you could leave it off, I would. If they absolutely require that as a requirement to possibly giving you an interview, then you may decide or not whether you want to interview with them because that's not exactly a great trait. Mihai says, best way to ask in an interview to figure out who you are dealing with so that you don't appear like a person with issues with adapting? Like, are you asking, like, what's the best way to ask in an interview? I don't know exactly what you mean, but you can't ask anything that will reveal that. They're going to reveal that they're going to signal that by what they choose to ask you and choose to say to you and how they treat you. You know what I mean? They're going to signal all of that by what they say, like what they choose to say and how they say it. And you have no control over that. Like the thing is, you can't force people to like you. You can't force people to see value in you. All you can do is make the best case for yourself. And if they agree with you, awesome. If they don't, because of some fundamental difference in their worldview, you have no control over that. Don't beat yourself up over the fact that, they didn't see your value when they should have. Okay? People have all kinds of screwed up perceptions of skills, value, you know what I'm saying? Like life choices. And, if you're talking to someone that just doesn't agree with you about fundamental things, there's not much you can do. This is why the goal of this game is to just get as many good quality leads as possible. Do as many interviews as you can. Give each one your best shot. And then beyond that, if the phone rings, great. If it doesn't, you don't care because you're moving on to the next lead, the next opportunity. Okay, that's how this works. Okay, don't keep looking back. This is not a statement about your value, okay? Or the suitability of your education, experience, and traits. Okay, it's not any kind of personal reflection. All it is it's telling you, do the things you have mesh with the things they have, okay? You could be Albert Einstein applying for a job, and you've got not only a PhD, not only a Nobel Prize, but you've pushed forward the boundaries of what we know about, relativistic physics and quantum mechanics. Now you try and get a job in a place, and they say, relativistic physics, who cares about that? Where it's at is AI and genetic research. That's where it's at right now. That's the kind of research we want done. So no, I'm sorry, no dice. It's not a reflection on you. It's a reflection on a complete mismatch between what you have and what they regard as something good. And you know what? A lot of these people, they're so out to lunch. It's astounding, is what it is. Okay, so don't beat yourself up over this stuff. If it clicks, great. If it doesn't, don't sweat it. Just move on. You're going to encounter a lot of people that have a lot of screwed up opinions about what's important, what's valuable, and what's the way to be. You know what I mean? This applies equally to personalities, right? So, a lot of, somebody mentioned sales earlier. They held some conferences in Canada about some guy that lives in Canada who's an academic, who's one of the foremost authorities on psychopaths in the world. And after the conference, he was getting a lot of CEOs and things contacting him and saying, how can I hire people like that? That goes to show you, Okay. Chemtech says, thank you so much. I was afraid of this. Here in Hungary, we have easily accessible databases where they can see my activity. But yeah, okay. I wasn't aware of that. Data Lore Q. Thanks, Bill, for getting that right. Awesome name, by the way. Touch22. Trying to network primarily, but working full-time still while spending time on the job hunt. Yeah. Yeah, it's always a challenge when you're really having to, you only have a tiny little space here to do the job hunt. But look at it as a good thing. The alternative, it's better than the alternative, right? To be out of a job and then you have to do this full time. Would that be a better situation? But yeah, learn about networking. Step into that world. It's not what a lot of people think, and a lot of it is unintuitive. So just be prepared for that. Betty Rubio says, hi, Bill. It seems many of the best answers for today's questions are networking. You should definitely continue those videos. Yeah, well, I did, but nobody watches them. That's the problem, because it's not the answer people are expecting or they look for. In fact, that is also why it's successful, because not many people are doing it. It's under the radar. If 100 people apply for a job or 200 people apply for a job, but one person gets a face-to-face meeting with the vice president of that unit, that person stands up above the crowd. How many people are requesting that the vice president meet with them? And the vice president comes away thinking, wow, I enjoyed that meeting. That's why it works. If 100 people were trying to contact the vice president, trying to get face-to-face meetings, then it may not work. But because there's only one, that's why it works. So while everybody is concerned with, like 80% of the candidates out there looking for jobs are all trying to get the 20% of jobs that are posted, that leaves the other 80% of the jobs out there wide open for people to do networking, and not many people are doing it. And then still less of those people are doing it correctly, So, that's the thing. It's a real opportunity. So by its very nature, it's not going to be a mainstream thing. And a lot of young people, when they hear me talk about this, they go, BS. What do you mean, like contact an executive? Who the hell am I to talk to an executive? I wouldn't know what to say. It's like, yeah, you learn it. It's actually pretty damn simple, really. But because your mind is completely closed to the idea, I know you'll never do it. And that's typical. So when I make videos on it, they're not very popular because people question everything I say, and they're biased against what I'm saying because that's not what they've been taught. They've never learned any of that. So that's fine. So in terms of the end result, in terms of me making videos, it's kind of not much incentive for me to make a lot of videos about them because they don't do me much good. That's the irony. So there you go. But you make an interesting comment there, Betty. Oh, I'm still behind. Okay. British Rifleman. What an awesome name. British Rifleman. Hey, you got a little picture there too. Any tips for getting a job in a large firm after university to do with an economics degree? How do I get through that initial stage of candidate selection? Well, that's what my entire channel is about. It's basically about figuring out what they are looking for and then making a great pitch for yourself in those terms, right? Now, a lot of what they're looking for is explicitly stated in a job ad. Here are the requirements. We're looking for someone with this, right? That's some of what they're looking for. There's other things they're looking for too, some of which you could intuitively guess. You could say they're looking for someone who's a pleasure to deal with. They're looking for someone who's punctual, who's got a good work ethic, someone who has great communication skills, someone that is comfortable working in a team and collaborating with people. They're not so pig-headed that they won't work with other people. So you can guess some of the other things they're looking for. But there's always a few things there that they're looking for this. This is what they really want, but there's no way to discover it. It's not typical. It's something out of left field. Okay. And for that, there is no real way to do it. Okay. So it's about satisfying that. And there are many methods of getting a job. Do the thing where you apply for job ads. That's the default method. Beyond that, there are many other things. Networking is a big one. Investigate those and do some of those also. That's all I can say in like a nutshell. But hopefully that helps. Darkman Jeff says, I'm in the accounting profession. Okay, great. Good for you. Hopefully that means you don't have a complete lack of imagination. I've worked with a lot of accountants. I know a lot of accountants. They've got some strengths and some weaknesses. But imagination would not be one of their strengths. Innovative thinking would not be one of their strengths. So yeah. However, diligence, attention to detail, punctuality, commitment, and a lot of other similar things, great organizational skills, that tends to be their strengths, as in addition to a steadfast commitment to following the rules. You can't break rules, especially when it comes to accounting in certain things, right? So it's great to see people that just have that. They dig their heels in and no, what's right is right. We will not compromise. We will not budge. We will do this properly. I think that's great. Other people disagree, but I think that's wonderful. Being an engineer type, I can really relate to that. Where did I leave off here? Thank you, Bill. Datalore says, thank you, Bill. I've been meaning to watch a lot of your playlist, but keep getting distracted by other things. Yeah, it happens. Life is complicated and varied. Toch, yes, I want to change careers completely. Okay, networking, Toch. Learn about that, okay? It's not just a tool to change jobs. It's something that will open all kinds of doors for you for the entire rest of your career, okay? So it's definitely worth getting into. It can be a bit intimidating. Especially if you're an introvert, especially if you have some level of social anxiety. But you know what? I'll tell you something. I'll let you in on a little secret. The great thing about talking to executives, okay, and I did this. I talked to something like, I don't know, over 100 CEOs in 1 year that I didn't know individually, one-on-one. And the great thing about dealing with those people is that generally speaking, they have really, really good communication skills, and they're very charismatic. So you rarely encounter, somebody that's going to be really mean to you, and be very harsh, and you rarely encounter that at like a high level. Okay, it's just bad business, and these people they have like, it's like the heavyweight championship of communication skills is what you're kind of observing. I'm a bit atypical in that. Communication skills are not my forte. Certainly not for executive level. I can do it, but it doesn't come naturally for me. I have to force myself. But if you deal with people at the bottom, you deal with recruiters, you deal with hiring managers, supervisors, a lot of times those people will bite your head off. They'll be very rude. They'll be very abrasive. They'll be very unprofessional. And it can be really tough, dealing with these people, basically trying to get meetings with them and things like this. It's a lot tougher. It's a lot more of a challenge dealing with people at the bottom than it is at the top. At the top, they know how to do it properly for the most part. So it's a much more positive process. Okay. So yeah, but learn it. It'll be worth your while. Godkin says, hi, is there any jobs in the IT industry that doesn't include programming? Oh yeah, well, like systems admin for a start. And I mean, you might need to know scripts and things like that, but you're not doing coding all day long, if that's your issue. But you should be able to do some basic coding. I mean, if you're going to get into IT, it's like, come on, you could watch a couple of YouTube videos and learn the basics. I mean, it's like if someone said, no, I refuse to do any coding whatsoever, and I don't know anything about coding, then I'd be like, okay, well, maybe that's going to be an issue for you, in this business. It's like saying, I want to be a doctor, but I absolutely refuse to be in the same room as human blood. It's like, well, that's kind of weird to go into that profession, King Polars is talking to Godkin. Camilla, I'm in the US and it's legal in my state, unfortunately. Yeah, I know. In the United States, different states have different laws and it varies widely for different things. So, Xavier or Xavier, depending on your point of view. How can you sell yourself in a job interview for a job you have no experience in, but that is in a similar field that you're currently working in? Thanks for the video, by the way. It helped me get my current job. It's too hard. It's hard for me to give a quick answer on that. But basically, look, a lot of your skills are transferable, okay? For any job, some of what you have will be transferable, okay? So you can say, look, you guys are looking for someone with 5 years experience in this. Well, I don't have that, but what I do have is I've got 10 years experience in this, okay? Now, if you actually examine what you do there, it's pretty much almost, point for point, exactly what you guys do in this job, okay? You do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. I have done all those things. I kick ass at all those things, okay? None of that is going to be a problem for me because I've done it just under a different name, under a different guise, in a different role, but it's the same process. It requires the same skills. And that's what I've done. And that's why I'm excited to do this. It's totally appropriate for me to do this job, okay? You relate it to stuff that you have, okay? And there's very few, if you look at it, I mean, if it's a reasonable job you're applying for, there'll be very few things on there that you just can't relate to, okay? So that's the kind of thinking you need if you're asking, like, how do I pitch very well when I don't have experience in certain things that they're looking for? Okay, that would be my answer to that. Relate it to what you do have. And the other thing is that if you're talking to a recruiter, recruiters don't know. They've never done the job themselves. So if you can make a very good case for it, a lot of times that'll work. Okay, I mean, it varies. Recruiters have all kinds of opinions. There's a vast kaleidoscope of opinions that they hold about things. Some pretty conventional and some, shall we say, innovative. New Formula says, would it be wise to quit a position I have currently to focus strictly on finding new opportunities? Money would not be an issue while I look. Okay, well, if that's truly the case and money will not be an issue, obviously you can be more effective at any kind of job search when you're doing it full time. Okay. There is a factor where if you deal with recruiters and some hiring managers, okay, because they have to go on these little mnemonics, like these little sort of tricks, because they don't know, right? There is a concept that says, if you are unemployed right now, there may be a reason for that the recruiter can't see or can't discover. Okay, and that being the case, it makes you a higher risk candidate if you're currently unemployed. Okay? Now, I've heard people recommend, like, on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile or whatever, don't put the end date for your current job. Just leave it there. If anyone asks, say, you just haven't updated it in a while, if they discover this discrepancy. And you could not advance the information that you quit your job. As far as they are aware, you're still working there. I've heard people advise that. I don't know how I feel about that. I wouldn't lie, but I might not lead with that information, The other thing is that, once again, if that's a concern, you can get around that usually with networking. But you would be able to devote more time and energy to job search, obviously, especially if you're doing informational interviews, things like this, where you have to set up meetings around your city or region. And the way that usually works is you ask the other party, name me a date, time, place of your convenience, and I'll meet you there. So it really helps if you're not encumbered with a day job where you have to be in a certain place, like 9 to 5 or something. Okay. So yes, it will help. I've got to end this soon. I got about 3 minutes left here, and I got to answer all these questions. So I'm just going to try this really quickly. New Formula. Would it be wise to quit a position? Oh, I already did that. Being in a position to network is difficult when current full-time. Yes, it is. Capil says, I am not a stable person toward the job, how to deal with it. Excuse me. I don't know what you mean. Are you an unstable person? You mean like personality-wise? Or you mean like in terms of steady work? I would not volunteer that. And if asked, I would just explain that, it's not me, it's my employer. They keep laying people off and, things like this. And I just have to keep moving around from necessity. But I was never fired for cause or something like that. That can help. If you can say that, that would help alleviate some concerns they might have. British Rifleman. Oh, and holy crap, British Rifleman sends £1 sterling. Thank you very much, British Rifleman. You're awesome. Thank you for your sharing of knowledge. I have only discovered you recently, earlier this year, so I still have to watch the rest of your videos. Thank you. Well, thank you for saying so, British Rifleman. I'm glad you got some value out of it. And not necessarily at you, but at everyone here. If you're looking for how to get hired, I put all that into a course right here. You can check that out, link in the description. And that covers not only how to do job interviews, how to discover jobs, it covers how to apply for a job through standard channels. It also covers things like networking. So check that out if you are interested. Link in description. Kapil says, in my 3.5 years of experience, I've changed 5 multinational corporations, and in the upcoming month, I will be changing another job. Please help me how to be stable in one company for at least... Well, I don't know the reason why you're changing it. You haven't said that. Are they laying you off? Is that the issue? If it's not your fault, it's not your fault. You just keep applying, keep looking for good opportunities, and as much as possible, try some of the other methods for applying for a job, because they tend to yield better quality jobs than going through standard channels, which is applying for postings online. Okay. And just call me Steve. I remember you from previously. Great stream as always. Thank you. Well, thank you. Just call me Steve, and I will, Steve. Thanks to everybody for being here. There's 43 of you guys here. Hopefully you got some value. I wish you nothing but the best. One last time, I'm going to plug my courses. You've heard me talk about this Get Hired course. Link in the description. There's also this, my $100 MBA course, link in the description. You're basically learning everything that you would learn in a Master's of Business Administration. The catch is that there's no classes. It's all self-study. You get the books. I kind of guide you through it. There's a lot of videos that I've posted, but you basically learn it yourself on your own time, own schedule, no evaluations, no assignments. So you can work around any schedule. But if you are interested in learning business, maybe you are looking to do a side hustle or even be an entrepreneur, this material is invaluable. Okay, it's the definitive material on how business works and how you can succeed in it. Okay, so check that out if you are interested. Thanks a lot. I will be back tomorrow with my usual Thursday stream, which is called Side Hustle Ideas. So if you're interested in the whole entrepreneurial side hustle, small business kind of thing, that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Take care, and I'll see you soon.